The adrenal glands are a complicated endocrine organ in that they have many layers of tissues. So we can't just cover the adrenal glands as a single gland. It's almost a number of glands kind of rolled into one. So let's first look at the location and anatomy. The location is above the kidneys. So if we look here in this image, we see the two kidneys in the abdominal cavity, and placed right atop each kidney is an adrenal gland. So you have two adrenal glands superior to each of your kidneys. These adrenal glands, if we were to slice through them, have multiple layers. So that's what gives them their complexity, in that each layer of the adrenal gland makes a different set of hormones. So if we take a histological sample of this adrenal gland, which say came from there, we would see many layers. First, it's surrounded by a capsule. That's just kind of an outer shell. The capsule doesn't produce any hormones. The first layer we would get to is called the zona glomerulosa. So that's the first layer. Then there's a layer underneath it called the zona fasciculata, then the zona reticularis, and then finally the center of the adrenal gland is called the medulla. So you'll notice that the adrenal gland is in essence four glands wrapped into one. So we have to look at the adrenal glands as if there's four separate endocrine glands. So let's take a look at the first zone or layer called the zona glomerulosa. This layer produces a group of hormones called mineral corticoids. Mineral meaning they must have something to do with a mineral. A corticoid is a steroid hormone. So these are lipid hormones, right? Because steroids are lipids. And they regulate certain minerals. We're going to learn one of these. The most abundant mineral corticoid is called aldosterone. And aldosterone is another one of these hormones you're going to hear about quite a bit this semester. Kind of like antidiuretic hormone, in that it's involved in a number of systems. So is aldosterone. What it does is it retains sodium. It actually retains sodium and chloride. So it keeps these ions in the body, sodium and chloride. So retention is to keep in. And what happens when you keep these ions in the body, it also keeps water in the body. So really, the effect that aldosterone has on the body is to retain sodium, chloride, and water. Now, who would be the target to retain these? Well, you're looking at it. It's the kidney. So aldosterone doesn't have far to go. It actually will circulate throughout the body, but its target is the kidney. The next layer, called the zona fasciculata, produces a group of hormones called glucocorticoids. So the gluco refers to glucose, so they have something to do with glucose homeostasis, and they're also a steroid, corticoid. So it's another steroid hormone that regulates blood sugar, glucose. So it does this by causing gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is a fancy way of saying producing glucose from something else, like an amino acid. They also are involved in stress responses. So the number one glucocorticoid is cortisol. So cortisol is a steroid hormone. It's often referred to as a stress hormone, so it's produced when the body's under a certain type of stress. Cortisol does a number of things, so we're going to talk about three major functions of cortisol. One is it increases blood pressure, which is required under times of stress. It increases blood sugar, which is in need during stress. And it also inhibits your immune system. So this is an interesting effect of this hormone, is it lowers your immune responses. And for this reason, we can use cortisol, or you've probably heard of hydrocortisone, which is a synthetic version, as an anti-inflammatory. So we use these as a medication to treat allergic reactions and inflammation. So hydrocortisone is a derivative of cortisol, and we can give it topically as a skin anti-inflammatory. If you've ever had an allergic reaction on your skin, we can use hydrocortisone creams. We can inject cortisone into joints to treat the inflammation in your joints. We can give it as an inhaled steroid to treat inflammation of your lungs and airways. So this is a very useful drug which was designed as a mimic of cortisol. So that's an important hormone / drug. The third layer is called the reticularis. It produces a number of androgens. Androgens are these kind of precursor hormones, like precursors to testosterone and estrogen. So notice females will produce a little bit of testosterone from their adrenal glands. And then the inside of the adrenal gland, called the medulla, is often referred to as the emergency gland because it amplifies your fight or flight responses. So remember fight or flight from your autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic responses. That's promoted by epinephrine and norepinephrine. So these act as hormones and act as neurotransmitters in your sympathetic nervous system. So adrenaline and noradrenaline come from the adrenal medulla. There are a number of adrenal gland disorders. For example, Cushing's syndrome is hypersecretion of cortisol, so the adrenal glands produce too much cortisol, causes rapid weight gain, this classic kind of moon face where the face is kind of rounded. Buffalo hump, which is a kind of a hump in the back, increased sweating, thinning of the skin. These are all signs of Cushing's syndrome. Addison's disease is a low production of cortisol and aldosterone. Addison's disease has a variety of symptoms. One of them, which is interesting, is cravings of salty foods. So remember the function of aldosterone. Aldosterone retains sodium. Well, if you don't have enough aldosterone, you lose sodium. And when the body loses excessive amounts of sodium, you'll start to crave salty foods. And this is a very dramatic craving. We all love sodium. We put sodium on everything. But these individuals with Addison's disease really have a severe craving for salty foods. And what's interesting is JFK, John F. Kennedy, had Addison's disease. Next video, we will discuss the pancreas.